20 years of marriage, 2 decades of building a life together, and it took 3 days in a Portuguese hospital, a stroke, and an unlocked phone for me to realize I'd been sleeping next to a stranger who wore my husband's face. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. And hey, thank you for choosing to spend your time here with me instead of scrolling through the million other things the internet is throwing at you right now. I hope your day has been kind to you, or at least bearable. If it hasn't, maybe this story will give you something to feel. Subscribe and stay tuned, because I'm bringing you daily romance stories that will make you feel everything. The good, the bad, and the beautifully complicated mess in between. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself with trumpets and warnings. It slides into your life wearing the face of normalcy, dressed in routine, speaking in the voice of the man you've shared a bed with for 2 decades. It kisses you good morning. It asks what's for dinner. It books an anniversary trip to Portugal because somewhere along the way, you both realized you'd become strangers who shared a mortgage and 2 teenagers who barely looked up from their phones long enough to notice their parents had stopped really seeing each other. My name is Maya Carter. I'm 49 years old, and I'm a black woman who spent the last 20 years building a life that looked perfect from the outside while slowly crumbling on the inside. I used to be a corporate attorney, the kind who wore power suits and commanded rooms, who made partners nervous and associates scramble. That was before I met David, before I chose love over ambition, before I convinced myself that being a supportive wife and devoted mother was enough to fill the spaces where my dreams used to live. David Carter is 52, a senior vice president at a tech consulting firm, with salt and pepper hair that makes him look distinguished instead of old, and a smile that used to make my stomach flip. Now it just makes me feel nothing. Or at least that's what I thought until we landed in Lisbon 2 days ago, until I watched him walk through the narrow cobblestone streets of Alfama with the Portuguese sun turning his brown skin golden, until I caught myself noticing the way his body had aged, still strong, still solid, still capable of making me remember what desire felt like before it got buried under resentment and routine. The anniversary trip was his idea. 20 years, Maya. We should do something special. Remember what it felt like when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. I almost laughed. Almost asked him when exactly he'd forgotten that feeling, because I remembered the exact moment 3 years after our wedding, and told myself maybe distance from home would give us the space to find each other again. Day 1 in Lisbon was awkward. We walked through the city like tourists following a guidebook, taking photos that would look romantic on Instagram while maintaining careful physical distance. We had dinner at a rooftop restaurant where the wine was excellent and the conversation was surface level. We went back to our boutique hotel, and for a moment, one breathless, terrifying moment, I thought he might actually touch me, might actually want me. He kissed my forehead and said he was exhausted from the flight. I lay awake in the dark, listening to him breathe, wondering if this trip was a mistake, wondering if our marriage was already over and we were just too comfortable, too intertwined, too scared to admit it. Day 2 started better. We took a food tour through the Baixa district, and somewhere between the pastel de nata and the ginginha, David laughed, really laughed, at something the guide said. His hand found mine. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and I felt it. That old pull. That dangerous heat that made me stupid at 29 and made me hopeful at 49. Tonight, he said, his voice dropping low, his eyes holding mine, with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. Tonight, let's remember why we did this, why we chose each other. My heart did something complicated in my chest, something that felt like hope and fear tangled together. We were walking back to the hotel, his arm around my waist, my body fitting against his the way it used to, when he stumbled. Just a little. I thought maybe the wine at lunch had been stronger than we realized. Then his face went slack on one side. Then he couldn't lift his right arm. Then he was on the ground, and I was screaming in a language I barely spoke, and strangers were calling an ambulance. And the anniversary trip I'd half hoped would save us became the nightmare that would reveal every lie we'd been living. The Portuguese hospital was clean, efficient, and terrifying. The doctors spoke English with thick accents, explaining that David had suffered an ischemic stroke. Minor, they said, but strokes are never truly minor. They were admitting him for observation, running tests, starting medications. His prognosis was good. He'd likely recover fully with minimal deficits. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt numb. They settled him in a private room, and I sat beside his bed watching him sleep. His face peaceful despite the IV in his arm and the monitors beeping their mechanical rhythm. His phone was on the bedside table. The nurses had removed it from his pocket along with his wallet and watch. It buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. I picked it up, intending to silence it, intending to be the good wife, the devoted partner, the woman who'd promised for better or worse. The lock screen showed a preview of a text message from someone named C. Mitchell. Work. Baby, I miss you already. Can't wait until you're back. These 3 days without you feel like torture. My hands went cold. My vision tunneled. I unlocked his phone, our anniversary, because of course his passcode was our anniversary. And I found them. Hundreds of messages. 2 years' worth of messages. Photos. Videos I will never be able to unsee. Detailed plans for weekends away when he told me he was at conferences. Hotel receipts. Restaurant reservations for 2. Her name was Christina Mitchell. She was 34 years old, a project manager at his firm, with long braids and a smile that lit up every photo. She was beautiful. She was young. She was everything I wasn't anymore. And my husband, the man lying in this hospital bed, the man I'd just spent 20 years building a life with, had been loving her for the last 2. If you believe a marriage can survive anything, then you've never sat in a foreign hospital room, holding evidence of betrayal in your shaking hands, while the man who destroyed you sleeps peacefully 3 feet away, completely unaware that you know. Subscribe to find out what happens when love and rage occupy the same broken heart. The first rule of discovering your husband's affair while he's medically incapacitated in a foreign country is simple. Don't scream. Don't throw things. Don't wake him up and demand answers while his brain is still swollen and fragile. Don't make a scene that will get you escorted out by security, leaving him alone in a hospital where neither of you speaks the language fluently. So I sat there, phone in my lap, evidence of 2 years of lies burning through my retinas. And I did what any rational woman would do. I read every single message. Every single one. The early ones were cautious. Professional with an undertone of flirtation. Great presentation today, David. You really commanded that room. His response, learn from the best. Coffee tomorrow to debrief? It escalated slowly. Compliments became more personal. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became dinner. Dinner became a kiss in a parking garage that he described it to her in graphic detail, telling her how he'd been thinking about her mouth for weeks, how he couldn't stop imagining what she tasted like. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to delete everything and pretend I never saw it. I wanted to smother him with his hospital pillow. Instead, I kept reading. The affair became physical 4 months after those first messages. A business trip to Seattle. A hotel room with a view of the water. He sent her a photo the next morning, him shirtless in bed, the sheets tangled around his waist, with a caption that made me see red. Best night of my life. You've ruined me for everyone else. Everyone else. Meaning me. Meaning his wife. Meaning the woman who'd given up her career so he could take promotions that required relocation. Meaning the woman who'd held him while he sobbed after his brother's funeral. Who'd raised his children, who'd pretended not to notice that he'd been gone long before he started sleeping with someone else. There were messages about me. About our marriage. Christina had asked once early on if he was going to leave me. His response made something crack in my chest. It's complicated, see, Maya and I. We're not in love anymore. We're co-parents, roommates. But she's not a bad person, and I don't want to destroy her. The kids are still at home. Timing matters. Can you be patient with me? Patient. As if 2 years wasn't patient enough, as if he was doing me some kind of favor by not publicly humiliating me while privately betraying me in every way that mattered. Christina's response, I'll wait forever if I have to. You're worth it. I actually laughed at that. A sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet hospital room. David stirred but didn't wake. His face was still slightly slack on one side, a reminder that his brain had betrayed him, even as he'd been betraying me. The irony wasn't lost on me. A nurse came in around midnight to check his vitals. She was young, kind, with gentle hands, and a smile that probably comforted most families. She said something in Portuguese, then switched to careful English. You should rest. There is a chair that reclines. He will sleep through the night. I nodded, thanked her, and watched her leave. Then I went back to the phone. The most recent messages were from 3 days ago, right before we left for Portugal. Christina had sent him a photo, her in black lingerie, posed on a bed I didn't recognize but suspected was in an apartment he'd been paying for. The message, something to remember me by while you're gone. Come back to me soon, baby. I love you. His response, sent from our bed while I was downstairs packing. You're going to be the death of me. I love you too. 3 days, and I'm all yours again. 3 days. This trip was supposed to be 3 days, a long weekend. Just enough time to check the box on our anniversary, take some photos, come home, and return to our separate lives. Except now he was stuck here for at least 3 more days, maybe longer. And I was stuck with him. The universe had a sick sense of humor. I must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and a doctor standing beside David's bed, speaking in rapid Portuguese to a younger colleague. David was awake, groggy but conscious, trying to respond to their questions. Mrs. Carter, the older doctor turned to me, his English accented but clear. Your husband is progressing well. The stroke was minor, but we need to monitor him closely. 3 days minimum, possibly 4. Then physical therapy assessments before discharge. David's eyes found mine. There was confusion there, and fear, and something that looked like love but might have just been dependence. Maya, what happened? Where are we? I stood, walked to his bedside, and took his hand. It felt wrong, foreign, like touching a stranger. You had a stroke. We're in Lisbon. At the hospital. You're going to be okay. Relief flooded his face. His fingers squeezed mine weakly. Thank God you're here. I don't know what I'd do without you. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they made me want to laugh, or scream, or both. Of course I'm here, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Where else would I be? His smile was lopsided, affected by the stroke. You're amazing, you know that? I'm so lucky. Lucky. The man who'd been sleeping with his 34-year-old colleague for 2 years thought he was lucky. The man who'd told another woman he loved her while lying in bed next to me thought he was lucky. I pulled my hand away gently. I need to call the kids. Let them know what's happening. Tell them I'm fine, he said. Tell him Dad's too stubborn to let a little stroke slow him down. Sure, I said. I'll tell them. I walked out of the room, down the hallway, past the nurse's station, and into a bathroom where I locked the door and finally let myself feel it. All of it. The betrayal, the rage, the grief for a marriage that had died without me noticing when I looked at myself in the mirror, 49 years old. Beautiful, I could admit that. My dark skin was still smooth. My body still curved in ways that should have made my husband want me. My hair was natural now, a crown of coils I'd learned to love after years of straightening it for corporate America. I had sacrificed so much to be his wife, his partner, his supporter, and he'd thrown it away for someone younger, someone who didn't carry the weight of 2 decades of disappointment and compromise. My phone buzzed. A text from his phone, still in my purse. From Christina. Haven't heard from you in 2 days, baby. Starting to worry. Is everything okay? Miss you so much. Can't wait to have you back in my arms. I stared at the message. Then I did something I absolutely shouldn't have done. I typed back. Everything's fine. Just busy with work stuff. Miss you too. Her response was immediate. I'm counting down the hours. Love you. I turned off the phone and put it in my purse. Then I washed my face, fixed my hair, and walked back to my husband's room with a smile on my face and murder in my heart. The next 3 days were going to be very interesting. Caring for someone you hate is an art form. It requires a smile that doesn't reach your eyes, hands that remain gentle even when they want to strangle, and a voice that stays soft even when you're screaming internally. I became a master of this art over the next 48 hours. Day 1 post-stroke, David needed help with everything. The doctors assured me this was temporary. The weakness on his right side would improve with therapy and time. But for now, he couldn't hold a fork properly, couldn't button his shirt, couldn't walk to the bathroom without assistance. Which meant I became his nurse, his caretaker, his devoted wife. I fed him breakfast, wiping yogurt from the corner of his mouth while remembering a message where he described licking whipped cream off Christina's body in explicit detail. I helped him to the bathroom, supporting his weight while he shuffled forward with a walker, and I thought about all the times he'd told her she made him feel young again, alive again, like a man instead of a ghost. I bathed him. That was the worst part. The nurse brought a basin of warm water, soap, washcloths, and left us with instructions in broken English about maintaining his dignity during personal care. Dignity. As if there was any dignity left in this room, in this marriage, in the charade we were performing. I'm sorry, David said as I unbuttoned his hospital gown, his voice thick with embarrassment. This is humiliating. You shouldn't have to do this. We're married, I said simply, keeping my eyes on the task. In sickness and in health, remember? His good hand reached for mine, trembling slightly. I know I haven't been the best husband lately. I know we've been distant. But Maya, when I thought I might die yesterday, all I could think about was you. How much I'd miss you. How much you mean to me. The words should have broken me. Should have made me melt. Forgive, forget. Instead, I felt nothing but cold rage. I washed his chest, his arms, his stomach. My hands were clinical, efficient, betraying none of the fury coursing through me. When I reached his thighs, he tensed. Maya, Relax, I said, my voice almost a whisper. I've seen every part of you, David. 20 years, remember? I washed him intimately, my touch professional, yet somehow charged with something dangerous. His body responded despite the circumstances, despite the medication, despite everything. His breath caught. His eyes met mine. And for a moment I saw it. Confusion, desire, guilt all tangled together in his expression. He didn't know why his body was reacting to my touch when we'd barely touched each other in months. Didn't know that rage and passion are separated by the thinnest of lines. "Maya," he breathed, and there was something raw in his voice, something that sounded like longing. I pulled my hand away and rinsed the washcloth. "All done. Let me help you into a clean gown." The moment shattered. He looked away, embarrassed. "Thank you for taking care of me, for being here." "Where else would I be?" I asked, echoing my words from yesterday. His phone, the one in my purse, had been buzzing all morning. Christina was getting worried. Her messages were becoming more frequent, more desperate. "Baby, please answer me. I'm scared something's wrong." "David, I love you. Just let me know you're okay. If you don't respond soon, I'm going to call. I don't care if it's risky." That last message made me smile. She was going to call. Perfect. I waited until David was napping, sedated by pain medication and exhaustion. Then I stepped into the hallway and answered his phone when it rang. "David? Oh my God, finally. I've been so worried." "This isn't David," I said calmly. Silence, then. "Who is this? Where's David?" "This is his wife, Maya, and David is in the hospital recovering from a stroke." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God, is he okay?" "He'll live," I said. "No thanks to the stress you've been putting on him for the past 2 years." More silence, then quieter. "You know." "I know everything, Christine. Every message, every photo, every lie he told me while he was falling in love with you." "Mrs. Carter, Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." I laughed, and I actually laughed. "You're sleeping with a married man, and you never meant for anyone to get hurt? That's impressive logic." "It's not like that," she said, defensive now. "David and I love each other. He told me your marriage was over, that you two were just staying together for the kids. And you believed him? How convenient for both of you." "He was going to leave," she insisted. "After your son graduated. He promised me." "He promised me too," I said quietly. 20 years ago, in front of 300 people, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. Turns out those promises don't mean much to your boyfriend." "He's not just my boyfriend," Christina said, her voice trembling. "He's the love of my life. Funny, he used to say that about me." I heard her crying. Soft, broken sobs that should have made me feel victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. "Listen carefully, Christina. David is going to be in this hospital for 3 more days. Then we're going home, to our house, to our life, to our marriage, and you're going to leave him alone. You can't keep him from me." "Watch me," I said. "He's medically fragile. He needs care. He needs his family, and right now, I'm all he has. So unless you want to explain to his doctors, his insurance company, and his employer why you've been having an affair with a married colleague, I suggest you disappear." "Does he know you know?" she asked suddenly. The question stopped me. "Not yet." "Are you going to tell him?" I looked through the window into David's room. He was sleeping, his face peaceful, unaware that his 2 worlds were colliding in a hospital hallway halfway across the world. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I'll let him keep thinking his secret is safe. Maybe I'll let him recover and get strong again. And then maybe I'll destroy him the way he destroyed me. Or maybe you'll realize your marriage was already dead and let him go," Christina said, bitter now. "Let him be happy with someone who actually wants him." "You think you want him?" I asked. "You want the David who snores, who leaves his wet towels on the bathroom floor, who watches football for 6 hours every Sunday and ignores everyone around him. You want the David who shut down emotionally after his brother died and wouldn't go to therapy because real men don't talk about their feelings. You want the David who'll do to you exactly what he did to me once the novelty wears off and you stop making him feel 25 again. Silence. You got the fantasy, Christina, the hotel rooms and the sneaking around and the forbidden romance. I got the reality, 20 years of it. So forgive me if I'm not ready to just hand him over because you've decided you're in love. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I felt powerful and broken at the same time. When I walked back into the room, David was awake. "Who were you talking to?" he asked groggily. "My sister," I lied smoothly. "Updating her on your condition." "That's good," he said. "I am glad you have support." Support. Right, because I was so supported, so cherished, so loved. "How are you feeling?" I asked, sitting beside his bed. "Scared," he admitted. "What if this happens again? What if next time it's worse?" I took his hand, the same hand that had touched another woman, held another woman, promised forever to another woman. "Then I'll be here, just like I'm here now." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you." "No," I agreed quietly. "You don't." He smiled, thinking I was joking, thinking we were having a moment, thinking his devoted wife was exactly who she appeared to be. He had no idea he was lying in bed with a woman who knew every secret, who'd talked to his mistress, who was deciding whether to save him or let him drown in the consequences of his choices. That night, after the nurses had dimmed the lights and David had fallen to medicated sleep, I sat in the reclining chair and made a list on my phone. Reasons to stay, 20 years of history, 2 children who need stable parents, financial security, fear of starting over at 49, a small, stupid part of my heart that still remembered loving him. Reasons to leave, Christina, 2 years of lies, the fact that he told her he loved her. The affair sex was better than anything we'd had in years based on those messages. The realization that I'd sacrificed my career, my ambitions, my identity to support a man who was willing to throw it all away. The lists were uneven. Believing wasn't simple. It never is when you built a life with someone. When your histories are so tangled you can't remember where you end and he begins. I looked at him sleeping. Still handsome despite everything. Still the father of my children. Still the man I'd chosen when I was young and stupid and believed in forever. Maybe forever was the lie we told ourselves to make the present bearable. Or maybe forever just meant I'd have to decide. Did I want revenge or did I want freedom? The thing about hospitals is that they strip away all pretense. There's no hiding in sterile rooms where bodily functions become routine conversation, and vulnerability is as common as antiseptic smell. David's recovery was progressing. The doctors were pleased with his mobility improvements. His speech was clearer. The droop in his face was barely noticeable now. In 3 days, he'd gone from helpless to functional. Which meant I was running out of time to decide what kind of woman I wanted to be when we left this place. It was day 4 when everything shifted. Physical therapy had exhausted him. I'd watched him struggle through exercises designed to retrain his brain, his body fighting against itself, frustration written across his features every time he fumbled with the simple tasks. The therapist, a cheerful Portuguese woman named Sophia, praised his progress while he glared at the parallel bars like they'd personally offended him. "You're doing wonderfully, Mr. Carter," she said. "Most patients take much longer to regain this level of function." "I'm not most patients," David had muttered, his competitive streak showing even in recovery. Back in his room, he was quieter than usual. I was reading a novel I'd bought in the hospital gift shop, a thriller about a woman who murders her husband and almost gets away with it. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Maya," David said suddenly, "can we talk?" I looked up. His expression was serious, almost frightened. Of course. He struggled to sit up straighter, wincing with the effort. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. I hadn't said much yesterday beyond the usual pleasantries and medical updates. What did I say? That I don't deserve you. His eyes met mine. You weren't joking, were you? My heart rate picked up. What makes you say that? Because I know you, Maya. I've known you for 23 years, and that tone in your voice. He paused. You've been different since the stroke. Colder, more detached. Like you're going through the motions, but you're not really here. You had a stroke, David. I've been focused on your care. No, he shook his head. It's more than that. You look at me like... He stopped, struggling for words. Like you're looking at a stranger, or worse. Like you're looking at someone you used to know but don't particularly like anymore. I closed my book carefully, buying time. You're reading too much into things. You're medicated, exhausted, recovering from a brain injury. Where's my phone? He asked abruptly. The question hung in the air between us like a grenade with the pin pulled. What? My phone. I haven't seen it since the stroke. The nurses said they gave my belongings to you. It's in my purse, I said calmly. I've been keeping it safe. Can I have it back? Why? Do you need to call someone? The words came out sharper than intended. His eyes narrowed. Maya, give me my phone. Oh, we stared at each other. 20 years of marriage compressed into this single moment. This decision point. I could give him the phone. Pretend I'd never looked. Maintain the lie. Or I could burn it all down right here. Right now, in this hospital room, on foreign soil where neither of us could escape. I reached into my purse and pulled out his phone, unlocked it, pulled up the message thread with Christina, handed it to him without a word. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his good hands start to shake, watched the moment he realized that I knew everything. Maya, his voice broke. Oh, God. Maya, I can explain. Can you? I stood up, my voice deadly calm. Can you explain 2 years? Can you explain telling her you loved her? Can you explain planning weekends away while telling me you were at conferences? Can you explain the hotel photos, the explicit messages, the promises you made to her while sleeping in our bed? I never meant, it wasn't supposed to. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. It just happened. I didn't plan it. Bullshit. The word came out hard. You don't accidentally have an affair for 2 years, David. You chose her. Every single day for 730 days, you woke up and chose to betray me. We were already broken, he shouted, then winced, his head clearly aching from the outburst. We haven't been a real couple in years, Maya. We're roommates who share kids. When was the last time you even wanted me? When was the last time you gave me a reason to want you? I shot back. You shut down after Marcus died. You pushed me away. You stopped talking to me, stopped touching me, stopped seeing me as anything but a fixture in your life. So forgive me if I didn't feel like throwing myself at a man who treated me like furniture. That's not fair. None of this is fair, my voice rose. I gave up my career for you. I moved 3 times for your promotions. I raised our children while you worked late. Or were you actually working, David? Or were you with her? It wasn't always her, he said quietly. Most of the time, I really was working. Most of the time? How comforting. He closed his eyes, fresh tears leaking out. I'm sorry. God, Maya, I'm so sorry. For what? For the affair? For getting caught? For having a stroke at the worst possible time? For all of it. He opened his eyes, and for the first time since the stroke, I saw the man I'd married. Vulnerable, flawed, human, for checking out of our marriage, for finding comfort somewhere else instead of fighting for us, for being too much of a coward to either fix us or leave honestly. The honesty shocked me more than the affair had. "Do you love her?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "I thought I did," he finally said. "Or maybe I loved how she made me feel, young, desired, alive, everything I didn't feel at home. And now I'm lying in a hospital bed, half paralyzed, with my wife, who I betrayed, taking care of me because she's too good a person to leave me here alone." He laughed bitterly. "Now I realize what an idiot I've been, what I threw away, what I destroyed." "You didn't throw it away, David. You systematically dismantled it, piece by piece, lie by lie, text message by text message." "I know. I talked to her," I said. "Christina, she called your phone." I answered. His eyes went wide. What did you tell her?" "That you were in the hospital, that you were coming home to me, that she needed to disappear." "Maya." "She told me you promised to leave me after Jordan graduates, our youngest son, currently a high school junior. Were you really going to do that? String me along for another year and a half, then announce you'd found someone else?" He looked away. "I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead." "Of course you hadn't, because thinking ahead would have required you to acknowledge the consequences of your actions, to see me as a person instead of just an obstacle to your happiness." "That's not—" He stopped. "Okay, maybe that's fair." We sat in silence. The machines beeped. A nurse laughed at something down the hallway. Life continued around us while ours imploded. "What happens now?" David asked finally. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to leave you here. Buy a ticket home. File for divorce before you land on American soil. Destroy you the way you destroyed me. And the other part?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved. This man who'd hurt me. This man who was still my husband, despite everything. "The other part remembers that you held me when my mother died. That you stayed up 3 nights straight when Jordan had pneumonia. That you built me a studio in the garage when I said I missed painting. The other part knows that people are complicated. That marriages are messy. That maybe we both let this die without fighting for it." "I did fight for it," he said quietly. "Just in the wrong direction. With the wrong person. Do you still want her?" The question cost me. Admitting I cared about the answer cost me even more. "I want you," he said carefully. "The way I used to. The way that made sense. But I don't know if we can get back there. I don't know if we should even try." "Honest," I said. "Painfully honest." "You asked." "I did." More silence then. "I'm not making any decisions in this hospital room, David. You're recovering from a stroke. I'm processing a betrayal. We're both exhausted and emotional and not thinking clearly. So what do? We go home. You finish your recovery. We tell the kids you had a minor health scare, but you're fine. And then—" I paused. "Then we figure out if there's anything left worth saving, or if we're just delaying the inevitable. And Christina is not my problem," I said firmly. "She's yours. You figure out what you need to tell her. But David, if you contact her while you're under my roof, recovering in my care, I will take you for everything you have. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. I'll make sure your children know exactly who their father is. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "I understand." "Good." I picked up my book, sat back down, and pretended to read while my hands shook and my vision blurred, and my heart cracked into 1,000 pieces I wasn't sure could ever be put back together. The irony was that the stroke had forced the truth, had given me power I wouldn't have had otherwise. He was dependent on me, vulnerable, unable to run to her for comfort or support. For the next week, at least, he was mine. What I did with that power would define everything that came next. We flew home 6 days after the stroke. David was mobile enough to travel with medical clearance, though he tired easily, and still had some weakness in his right hand. I'd arranged everything: wheelchair assistance at both airports, aisle seats with extra leg room, medication schedules perfectly timed to avoid complications during the flight. I was the picture of the devoted wife. Inside, I was still deciding whether to save him or ruin him. Our kids picked us up from the airport. Jordan, 17, all long limbs and teenage awkwardness, hugged his father carefully like David might break. "Dad, he scared the hell out of us." "Language," I said automatically. "Mom, he had a stroke. I think I'm allowed to curse." Alexis, 19 and home from college for the summer, was more reserved. She'd inherited my analytical mind, my tendency to observe before engaging. She hugged David, but her eyes found mine over his shoulder, questioning. She knew something was wrong beyond the medical crisis. My daughter had always been too perceptive for her own good. "How are you really?" she asked me while David and Jordan loaded luggage. "Tired," I said, which wasn't a lie. And beyond tired, I looked at her, my beautiful, intuitive daughter who believed her parents had a solid marriage because we'd been so good at pretending. "Ask me again in a few weeks." Oh, her eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth to say something and then closed it. "Okay. But Mom, I'm here if you need me." "I know, baby." The drive home was filled with Jordan's chatter about baseball practice and college applications, with David offering advice that sounded hollow given his weakened state. Alexis was quiet in the back seat beside me, her hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze mine. Our house looked exactly the same. Colonial style, perfectly maintained lawn, the garden I'd spent years cultivating. 20 years of life contained in 4 walls and a mortgage we'd nearly paid off. I helped David inside while the kids brought in luggage. He moved slowly, carefully, still afraid his body might betray him again. "Home," he said softly. "God, it feels good to be home." Home, where he'd lied to me, where he'd texted Christina while I cooked dinner, where he'd probably imagined her while pretending to make love to me on the rare occasions we still tried. "Go rest," I said. "Doctor's orders." He nodded, heading toward our bedroom. Our bedroom. The bed we'd shared for 2 decades. The bed I wasn't sure I could share with him anymore. I'd made up the guest room before we left for Portugal. At the time, it was just meant to be refreshed for potential visitors. Now it felt like a premonition. "Kids," I called. "Family meeting in the kitchen." They gathered around the island where I'd made countless meals, supervised homework, listened to teenage drama, normal life, the life that existed before I knew the truth. "Your father is going to need help over the next few weeks," I said. "Physical therapy appointments, medication management, monitoring for any changes. The doctors say his prognosis is excellent, but recovery takes time." "We'll help," Jordan said immediately. "Whatever you need, Mom." "I know you will." I took a breath. "As something else, your father and I are going through some things. Nothing for you to worry about right now, but we need space to work through some issues. So I'm going to be sleeping in the guest room for a while." Alexis's expression shifted, understanding dawning. "Mom, it's complicated," I said firmly, "and it's between your father and me. What you need to know is that we both love you, and whatever happens, that doesn't change. Understood?" Jordan looked confused. "Are you guys getting divorced?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe, maybe not. We're figuring it out." Because of the stroke, he asked. Because of a lot of things that have nothing to do with you. I pulled them both into a hug. I need you to trust me right now. Can you do that? They nodded against my shoulders, my babies who weren't babies anymore, who were old enough to sense the cracks in their parents' foundation. After they dispersed, Jordan to call his friends, Alexis to unpack, but probably to text her college boyfriend about the drama, I found David in our bedroom sitting on the edge of the bed. You told them, he said. I told them we're having problems. I didn't tell them why. Are you sleeping in the guest room? Yes. He nodded slowly. I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse than that. I know. I moved to the closet, started pulling out clothes. Enough for a week, maybe longer, maybe forever. Maya, his voice stopped me. I ended it. With Christina, I texted her from the airport. I turned. What did you say? That it's over. That I can't see her anymore. That I need to focus on my marriage and my recovery. How noble of you, I said flatly. Ending your affair after getting caught. I didn't end it because I got caught. I ended it because lying in that hospital bed, I realized what I was losing. What I'd already lost. You've taken care of me this past week with such... He struggled for words. Such grace. Such strength. Even knowing what you knew, even hating me. You were there. Where else would I be? You could have left. Should have left. Most women would have. I'm not most women. No, he agreed quietly. You're not. I continued packing my clothes. His eyes followed my movements, and I could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy with regret and something else. Something that felt like longing. Do you remember our wedding night? He asked suddenly. The question stopped me. Why? Because I was just thinking about it. How you looked in that dress. How I couldn't wait to get you alone. How we stayed up until dawn just thinking about it. How you looked in that dress. How I couldn't wait to get you alone. How we stayed up until dawn just talking and laughing, and he paused. When did we stop laughing, Maya? When your brother died and you locked me out of your grief, I said. When you decided you'd rather suffer alone than let me help you. When you turned me into the enemy instead of your partner. I never meant to do that. But you did. He stood, moved toward me. His gait was still slightly unsteady, but he was healing, getting stronger. Soon he wouldn't need me anymore. I want to fix this, he said. I want to fight for us. Now you want to fight. After 2 years of choosing her. After I had to find out by accident. After you got sick and realized you needed me. I turned to face him fully. That's not fighting for us, David. That's fighting for convenience, for comfort, for the life you built that you don't want to lose. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. I threw a blouse into my bag with more force than necessary. You don't get to decide you want to fix things now that you've been caught. You don't get to have a medical crisis and suddenly remember you have a wife who deserves better than scraps of your attention between affair messages. Then what do you want from me? His voice rose. You want me to grovel? I'll grovel. You want me to go to therapy? I'll go. You want me to quit my job so I never see her again? I'll do it. Just tell me what you need. I need you to have never fucked her in the first place. The words came out raw, guttural. I need 2 years of my life back. I need to unknow what her body looks like in those photos you saved. I need to unhear you telling her you loved her. I need to erase every lie you told me while planning weekends with her. But I can't have any of that, can I? We stood there, breathing hard, years of resentment and pain filling the space between us. No, he said finally. You can't have any of that. And I have to live with being the man who did that to you, who destroyed the best thing in his life because he was too broken to fix himself first. The admission disarmed me, made me see him clearly, not as the villain in my story, but as a flawed man who'd made terrible choices born from his own unhealed wounds. I loved you so much, I said softly. Did you know that? After Marcus died, when you pushed me away, I still loved you. I waited for you to come back to me. Months turned into years, and I kept waiting. I kept hoping, and you never came back. You went to her instead. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you did? You didn't just cheat, David. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like 20 years of devotion wasn't enough, like I wasn't desirable or interesting or worth staying faithful to. You were always enough, he said, his voice breaking. God, Maya, you were always too good for me. That's the problem. You deserve better than the shell of a man I became after Marcus. And instead of becoming better, I found someone who didn't know the old me, who didn't have expectations, who didn't remind me of everything I'd failed at. So this is my fault? For expecting you to be a husband? A partner? No. It's my fault for being too much of a coward to face my own failures, for medicating my pain with someone else's attention instead of doing the work to heal. I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't know if we can come back from this. He sat beside me, careful to maintain distance. Neither do I. But I want to try, if you'll let me. Trying isn't enough, David. Effort isn't enough. You've broken something fundamental between us, and I don't know if trust can be rebuilt once it's this shattered. Then what are we doing? He asked. Are we just waiting until I'm recovered enough that you can leave with a clear conscience? The question hung between us, honest, brutal. Maybe, I admitted. Or maybe I'm trying to figure out if the man I married is still in there somewhere, under the lies and the affair and the abandonment. Maybe I'm trying to see if there's anything worth salvaging, or if we're just two people who once loved each other but grew into strangers. And if I prove I'm still that man, then maybe we have a chance. I looked at him directly. But David, I'm not going to make this easy for you. You want to fight for this marriage? You're going to have to fight harder than you've ever fought for anything. You're going to have to be honest, even when it hurts. You're going to have to face what you did and why you did it. You're going to have to earn back every ounce of trust you destroyed. And even then, even if you do everything right, I might decide it's not enough. That I deserve a fresh start without the weight of your betrayal crushing me every day. I understand. I hope you do, 'cause I'm done being the understanding wife, the supportive wife, the wife who sacrifices her own needs for everyone else's comfort. From now on, I'm choosing me, and if that means our marriage doesn't survive, then maybe it wasn't supposed to. I stood, picked up my bag of clothes, and walked toward the door. Maya, he called after me. I turned. I'm going to prove I'm worth fighting for, he said. Even if it takes years, even if you never fully forgive me. I'm going to become the man you deserved all along. Don't do it for me, I said. Do it for yourself. Because you can't love someone else properly until you love yourself enough to stop destroying the good things in your life. I left him sitting on our bed, looking broken and lost, and finally aware of what he'd thrown away. In the guest room, I unpacked my clothes and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He told me it's over, that he's choosing you. I just want you to know I never meant to fall in love with your husband, but I did. And I think he loved me too. Maybe more than he ever loved you, because I saw him for who he is now, not who he used to be. If he comes back to me, I'll be waiting. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, if he comes back to you, he's all yours. Because I don't want a man who can't decide where he belongs. But Christina, you should know, the man you fell in love with is the same man who lied to his wife for 2 years. What makes you think he won't do it to you, too? I blocked her number before she could respond. Then I curled up on my side and let myself cry. Not for David, not for our marriage, but for the woman I used to be, the one who believed in forever, who trusted completely, who didn't know that love could coexist with betrayal and rage and a desperate, aching hope that maybe, just maybe, broken things could still be made whole. Recovery is not linear. That's what the physical therapist told David during his first appointment 3 days after we got home. Progress happens in fits and starts, with setbacks and breakthroughs, frustration and small victories. She could have been talking about our marriage. The first 2 weeks were a dance of proximity and distance. David slept in our bedroom. I slept in the guest room. We coexisted in the shared spaces of our home like polite strangers, passing each other in hallways, coordinating schedules around his therapy appointments, maintaining civility for the kids' sake. But something was different. He was trying, not in the grand, sweeping gestures that mean nothing, but in small, consistent ways that I noticed despite myself. He started cooking again. Nothing elaborate. His right hand still struggled with fine motor skills. But he made breakfast on the mornings I had early meetings. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee exactly how I liked it. He left it on the counter with a note. Thank you for everything, D. I found the notes almost worse than the betrayal, because they were sincere, because they reminded me of the man he used to be, before grief hollowed him out. He went to therapy, and not just physical therapy for the stroke, but actual therapy. A psychologist who specialized in grief and trauma. He told me about it one evening while I was reviewing contracts at the kitchen table. I found a therapist, he said, hovering in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed in the room. Dr. Chen. She has experience with complicated grief and other issues. Good, I said without looking up. I'm going twice a week. I should have done this years ago. After Marcus. Yes, you should have. He was quiet for a moment. I'm also looking for a new job. That made me look up. What? I can't work there anymore. Not with... He stopped. It's not appropriate. And I don't want the temptation or the complication. So I'm putting out feelers, talking to headhunters. That's a significant financial risk, I said carefully. Your position, your salary... I don't care. His voice was firm. Some things matter more than money. I'm starting to remember that. I studied him. He looked tired but determined. Thinner than before the stroke. There was gray in his beard he hadn't bothered to trim. He looked like a man who'd been to war with himself and wasn't sure who won. Okay, I said finally. Okay? That's a good choice. The right choice. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You're doing this for you, remember? Not for me. Right. He nodded. For me. But we both knew he was lying. Alexis cornered me one Saturday morning while David was at therapy and Jordan was at baseball practice. She found me in my studio in the garage, the space David had built for me years ago that I'd barely used. Too busy supporting everyone else's dreams to nurture my own. I was painting. Something I hadn't done in months, maybe years. The canvas was a mess of blues and blacks and violent reds, emotion made visible, grief and rage translated into color. That's intent, Alexis said from the doorway. I turned, paintbrush in hand. When did you get so tall? She smiled. I've been this height since sophomore year, Mom. Right. I set down the brush. What's up, baby? She came closer, studying the painting. Is this about Dad? It's about a lot of things. Is he why you're sleeping in the guest room? I'd been waiting for this conversation, dreading it. Yes. Did he cheat on you? The question was so direct, so matter-of-fact, that I almost laughed. What makes you ask that? Because I'm not stupid. Because you look at him like he's a stranger. Because he looks at you like he's drowning, and you're the only lifeline, but he's not sure you'll throw it. She crossed her arms. And because I saw Christina at his office Christmas party, I saw how they looked at each other. My stomach dropped. You knew? I suspected. I didn't want to believe it. Her eyes filled with tears. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That Dad wouldn't do that. That our family was different. I pulled her into my arms, this daughter who'd inherited my ability to see what others missed. I'm sorry you had to carry that alone. Are you leaving him? She asked against my shoulder. I don't know yet. Do you still love him? The question every daughter asks. The question that has no simple answer. I love who he used to be, I said carefully. I love the father he is to you and Jordan. I love 20 years of history and memories and shared dreams. But the man who betrayed me, I don't know if I can love him. I don't know if I want to. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. What does he want? To fix things, to prove he's changed, to earn back what he lost. And you're letting him try? I'm not leaving while he's recovering from a stroke. That would make me the villain, and I'm not ready to be the villain in this story. That's not the only reason, Alexis said shrewdly. If you were done, really done, you wouldn't care about being the villain. You'd just leave. My daughter knew me too well. Maybe there's a part of me that wants to believe people can change, I admitted. Or maybe I'm just scared of starting over at 49. Or maybe I'm waiting for him to screw up so I can leave with a clear conscience. Or maybe, she said softly, you still love him, even though you don't want to. I turned back to my painting, to the chaos of color that represented my internal landscape. Love isn't always enough, baby. Sometimes love just means you get to hurt more when everything falls apart. But sometimes, she said, it means you get to rebuild something real. I looked at my daughter, my wise, observant, heartbreakingly hopeful daughter, and wondered when she'd become the adult, and I'd become the one who needed guidance. We'll see, I said. That's all I can promise right now. We'll see. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere down the hall, David was probably doing the same thing. My phone buzzed. A text from him. Are you awake? I debated ignoring it, pretending to be asleep, maintaining the distance I'd worked so hard to create. Instead, I typed back, yes. Can I come talk to you? I promise I'll leave if you say no. Every cell in my body screamed no. Screamed that letting him in, physically, emotionally, any way at all, was dangerous. That I'd worked too hard to protect myself to give him access again. But curiosity won, or maybe it was something else, something I wasn't ready to name. Fine, but keep the lights off. A minute later, there was a soft knock. I opened the door. David stood there in pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. Come in, I said. He entered carefully, like the room might explode if he moved wrong. I sat on the bed. He took the chair by the window, maintaining distance. I can't sleep, he said. Haven't been able to since we got home. Guilty conscience? Yes. But also, he paused, I miss you. I miss talking to you. I miss knowing what you're thinking. I miss being the person you share things with. You gave up that privilege. I know. But I'm asking for it back, even just a little, even just for tonight. I should have said no. I should have sent him back to his room, back to his guilt, back to the consequences of his choices. Instead, I said, what do you want to talk about? Relief washed over his face. Anything. Everything. I want to know what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you need from me. You can't handle what I'm feeling. Try me. So I did. I told him about the rage that lived in my chest like a living thing, about the moments I fantasized about destroying him professionally, socially, emotionally, about how I sometimes looked at him and felt nothing but contempt, about how other times I looked at him and remembered loving him so much it hurt, and that memory made the betrayal cut even deeper. I told him about talking to Christina, about the text she'd sent afterward that I'd blocked, about how I sometimes wondered if he actually loved her, if she'd given him something I couldn't. I told him about Alexis knowing, about how our daughter had carried that suspicion alone, protecting me from the truth while watching her father destroy their family. I told him I'd started painting again, started remembering who I was before I became his wife, his support system, his convenient excuse for a life half-lived. And I told him the truth that scared me most. That part of me wanted to forgive him, wanted to believe in second chances and redemption and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. And I hated myself for wanting that because it felt weak, felt like betraying the woman who deserved better. He listened to all of it, didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself, just sat in that chair and took every word like the punishment it was. When I finally stopped talking, my throat raw, my eyes burning with unshed tears, he spoke. Thank you for being honest, for letting me hear what I've done to you, what I'm still doing to you just by existing in your space. That's it? That's all you have to say? No. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I also want to say that you're the strongest person I've ever known, that watching you process this, watching you hold yourself together while everything falls apart, watching you still be a mother and a professional, and somehow not completely lose your mind, it's humbling. It makes me realize even more what I threw away. Pretty words, David. But I've heard pretty words before. I know. So let me say something that's not pretty. He took a breath. I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I've destroyed something irreparable. That no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, it won't be enough. That you'll wake up one day and realize you're done, and I'll have to watch you leave knowing I did this, knowing I turned the best thing in my life into something you need to escape from. His voice broke on the last words. Real emotion. Raw and unfiltered. I'm terrified too, I admitted, crying. I'm terrified that if I forgive you, I'm setting myself up to be hurt again. But I'm also terrified that if I don't at least try, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if we could have made it, if love really can survive something this devastating. What do you need from me right now, in this moment? I looked at him across the darkened room. This man who'd been my husband, my betrayer, my patient, my enemy, my... What? What was he now? I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. That even if I forgive you for my own peace, it doesn't mean we get to go back to how things were. It doesn't mean we have a future together. I understand. Do you? Because you keep talking about fixing things, about proving yourself, about earning me back. But David, I'm not a prize to be won. I'm a human being who's been shattered, and I need to figure out if I can be whole again, with or without you. You're right. He stood slowly. I've been making this about me, about what I want, about easing my guilt, when it should be about you, about what you need to heal. He moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, he said softly, I'm in individual therapy, but Dr. Chen suggested couples counseling, if and when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Just, if you want to try salvaging this with professional help, I'm willing. I'll think about it. He nodded. That's more than I deserve. Good night, Maya. David? He turned. I don't hate you, I said. I wish I did. It would be easier. Something passed across his face, hope mixed with anguish. I don't deserve that either, but thank you. After he left, I lay back down, but sleep still wouldn't come, because the terrifying truth was that I did still love him. Buried under the rage and betrayal and grief was the love that had sustained us for 20 years. And I didn't know if that love was strong enough to rebuild us, or if it would just make the eventual ending hurt more. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David. I know you said you don't hate me, but I need you to know something. I hate myself enough for both of us. What I did to you, to us, to our family, it's unforgivable. But I'm going to spend every day for the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of a second chance, even if that second chance never comes, even if you walk away tomorrow. Because you deserve to know that what I did wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being too broken to see that I already had everything. I read the message 3 times. Then I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more pain, more impossible decisions. But tonight, for the first time since Portugal, I felt something other than rage. I felt possibility. Dangerous, terrifying, fragile. Possibility. If you believe that broken people can heal broken relationships, you've never tried to rebuild trust after betrayal while your heart is still bleeding. Subscribe to find out if Maya and David can create something new from the ashes of what they destroyed. 3 months after Portugal, I sat across from David in Dr. Lauren Martinez's office, a couples therapist with kind eyes and zero tolerance for bullshit. We'd been coming here twice a week for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of uncomfortable silences, brutal honesty, and slowly, painfully learning to communicate like adults instead of wounded animals circling each other. Today's session was different. Dr. Martinez had given us an assignment. Decide whether we were committed to rebuilding or letting go. Maya, Dr. Martinez said, her voice gentle but firm, you've been incredibly patient. You've allowed David space to work on himself. You've engaged in this process with integrity and openness. But I think it's time to ask the hard question. Do you want to stay married to this man? The question hung in the air. David's eyes were on me, intense and afraid. 3 months ago, I would have said no without hesitation. Would have taken pleasure in watching him crumble. Now I knew things I hadn't known before. I knew that David's affair started 6 weeks after the 3rd anniversary of Marcus's suicide. I knew that he'd been having panic attacks for months before meeting Christina, and that she'd represented an escape from grief he couldn't process. I knew that when he told me he was working late, sometimes he actually was, sitting in his car in parking lots, crying, unable to face, coming home to a life that reminded him his brother was gone. I knew this didn't excuse the affair, but it explained the broken man who'd made broken choices. I also knew that David had quit his job, taken a position at a smaller firm for less money and no contact with Christina. I knew he'd been going to therapy religiously, doing the work even when it was uncomfortable. I knew he'd started medication for depression he'd been hiding for years. I knew he'd written letters to our children, not to excuse himself, but to apologize for the pain his choices would cause when they inevitably learned the full truth. Letters that made me cry because they were honest and vulnerable, and everything I'd needed him to be for the past 3 years. I knew that he looked at me differently now, not with the casual comfort of long marriage, but with something rawer, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time in years and was terrified of losing what he'd taken for granted. And I knew that somewhere in the past 3 months, I'd started to remember why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. "I want to stay married," I said finally, "but not to the man he was, to the man he's becoming." David exhaled shakily. "Maya, let me finish." I turned to face him fully. "You destroyed something fundamental between us, David. The easy trust, the assumption of fidelity, the belief that we were partners in everything. That's gone. It's not coming back." His face fell. "But," I continued, "maybe we don't need that version of our marriage anymore. Maybe that version was built on complacency and avoidance and pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Maybe we needed it to burn down so we could build something real." "What does that look like?" he asked quietly. "I don't know yet, but I know what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like me sacrificing my needs for yours. It doesn't look like you checking out emotionally when things get hard. It doesn't look like either of us settling for a marriage that's comfortable but dead. What do you need from me?" His voice was raw. "Tell me and I'll do it. I need you to understand that forgiveness is a process, not an event. There will be days I'm angry, days I resent you, days I wonder if I'm making a mistake. And you have to be okay with that. You have to give me space to feel everything without taking it personally or getting defensive. I can do that. I need complete transparency, passwords to everything, location sharing on our phones, full access to your calendar, your email, your life. I know that sounds controlling." "It doesn't," he interrupted. "It sounds like you're trying to feel safe again. And you should have had that access all along. I need you to keep going to therapy, even when it's hard, even when you think you're fine, because you have wounds that predate our marriage, and until you heal them, you'll keep bleeding on people who didn't cut you. Already committed to that. And I paused, surprised by what I was about to say. "I need you to date me again. Not like we're married, like we're two people who are interested in each other and want to see if something real can develop. I need romance, effort. I need to feel chosen, not obligated." A slow smile spread across his face. The first real smile I'd seen in months. "I can absolutely do that." Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "Maya, what you're describing is essentially starting over while carrying the history of your marriage. That's incredibly difficult. Are you prepared for how hard that's going to be?" "No," I admitted, "but I'm tired of taking the easy way out. I gave up my career because it was easier than fighting for both. I stayed silent about my needs because it was easier than risking conflict. I'm done with easy. I want hard. I want real. I want a marriage that's worth the work it takes to maintain it." "And if it doesn't work, Doctor," Martinez pressed, "if 6 months from now you realize you can't get past the betrayal, then at least I'll know I tried, that I gave us every possible chance, and I'll be able to walk away knowing I fought for something worth fighting for." David reached for my hand. I let him take it. His palm was warm, familiar despite everything. "I'm going to make you fall in love with me again," he said. "Even if it takes the rest of my life. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I'm not. I'm stating a fact. You're the most extraordinary woman I've ever known, Maya Carter. And I'm going to spend every day proving that I see you, that I choose you, that you're not just my wife. You're the love of my life, and I was too stupid and broken to appreciate that until I almost lost you. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking, opening, letting light in for the first time in months. Take me to dinner, I said. Tomorrow night. Somewhere nice. Somewhere we've never been before. And romance the hell out of me. His smile widened. It's a date. That night, I moved back into our bedroom. Not because everything was fixed, but because I was tired of sleeping alone. Tired of punishing both of us for his mistakes. Tired of living in a house where we were separated by walls and wounds instead of working through them together. David was already in bed reading. He looked up when I entered, surprise and hope warring on his face. "Hey," he said carefully. "Hey." I set my pillow on my side of the bed. Ground rules, no expectations. We're sharing a bed, not necessarily intimacy. If I need space, you give it to me. If I can't sleep, I go back to the guest room and you don't take it personally. Understood. I climbed into bed, and for a moment, we just lay there in the dark. Two people who'd shared this space for 20 years but felt like strangers. Then David spoke. "Can I hold you? Just hold you. Nothing else." I considered saying no, maintaining the boundary, protecting myself. Instead, I rolled toward him. "Okay." He pulled me against his chest, and God, it felt good. Felt like home despite everything. His arms were familiar, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. I'd forgotten how well we fit together when we weren't fighting or hiding or breaking each other. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. "I know I don't get to say that anymore without proving it first. But I needed you to hear it anyway." "I love you too," I admitted. "I hate that I do, but I do." His arms tightened around me. "We're going to make it, Maya. I know we are." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we'll crash and burn spectacularly. But at least we'll do it together." He laughed softly. "That's the most romantic thing you've said to me in years." "Shut up and let me sleep." "Yes, ma'am." I closed my eyes, feeling his breath against my hair, his body warm and solid against mine. And for the first time since Portugal, I felt something that wasn't rage or grief or confusion. I felt peace. The next night, David picked me up at 7. Actually picked me up. Rang the doorbell and waited while I finished getting ready. Like we were teenagers going on a first date instead of middle-aged people trying to save a broken marriage. I'd worn a dress. A red dress that hugged my curves and made me feel powerful and desirable and completely unlike the woman who'd been caregiving and grieving for the past 3 months. When I opened the door, the look on David's face made every insecurity I'd been carrying dissolve. "You're stunning," he said, his voice rough. "Absolutely stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself." He did. Charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone in a way that made me remember what his chest looked like bare. What it felt like under my hands. "Down, girl," I told myself. "We're taking this slow." But the heat in his eyes told me slow was going to be a challenge for both of us. He took me to a new restaurant in the city, the kind with mood lighting and a wine list that required a sommelier, the kind we used to go to before kids and mortgages and life got in the way. "I made a list," he said after we'd ordered, "of all the things I love about you. All the reasons I fell in love with you 23 years ago, and all the reasons I should have been on my knees, thanking God every day that you chose me. David, let me do this, please." So I let him. He told me he loved my strength, the way I could command a room or negotiate a contract or manage a crisis without breaking. He loved my laugh, the real one, not the polite one I used in social situations. He loved that I sang off-key in the shower and cursed at traffic and cried at commercials about soldiers coming home. He loved that I'd sacrificed my career for our family but never lost myself completely. That I'd built a studio and kept painting even when no one was watching. That I'd raised our children to be kind and thoughtful and brave. He loved that I'd taken care of him after the stroke, even though I had every reason to leave him in that Portuguese hospital. That I'd given him a chance to prove himself when most women would have burned his clothes and changed the locks. He loved my body, every curve, every mark, every inch of skin that had changed over 20 years. He loved the gray in my hair I'd stopped covering, the laugh lines around my eyes, the stretch marks on my stomach from carrying his children. By the time he finished, I was crying, quiet tears that I didn't bother to hide. "You really see me," I said softly. "After all these years, after everything, you finally really see me." "I always saw you," he said. "I just forgot to look. And that's the biggest regret of my life. That I stopped paying attention to the most incredible woman I've ever known." "Kiss me," I said. He froze. "Maya, kiss me. Right here. Right now. Show me you mean every word." He stood and came around the table and pulled me to my feet. His hands cupped my face, and when his lips met mine, it wasn't tentative or apologetic. It was claiming, desperate, full of 3 months of denial and years of taking each other for granted, and the sudden, terrifying realization that we'd almost lost each other completely. I kissed him back with everything I had. All the rage and grief and love and hope tangled together into something that felt like fire and forgiveness and a choice to believe in second chances. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I saw other diners staring. Let them stare. Let them judge. Let them wonder about the couple who was making out in a fancy restaurant like teenagers who couldn't keep their hands off each other. "Take me home," I said. "Maya, we don't have to—" "Take me home, David. Now." We barely made it through the front door. 23 years of knowing each other's bodies, 20 years of marriage, 3 months of denial, it all came together in a desperate tangle of hands and mouths and me that had been building since that hospital room when I bathed him and felt something dangerous stir beneath the rage. He pushed me against the wall, his mouth on my neck, my collarbone, the hollow of my throat. "God, I've missed you, missed this, missed us." I pulled his shirt over his head, my hands relearning the geography of his chest, his shoulders, the places that made him groan when I touched them just right. "Show me," I breathed. "Show me you choose me, that you want me, that I'm enough." "You're everything," he said against my skin. "You've always been everything." We made love in our bed, the same bed where we'd conceived our children, argued about bills, slept back to back during the cold years. But tonight it felt different. New, like we were creating something fresh from the ashes of what we'd destroyed. Afterward, we lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless in something that felt like healed. "I'm not naive enough to think this fixes everything," I said into the darkness. "Neither am I. We're going to have hard days, days where I remember and it hurts, days where you disappoint me or I disappoint you. I know. But David, I'm choosing us. I'm choosing to believe that people can change, that marriages can survive betrayal if both people are willing to do the work, that love is worth fighting for even when it's terrifying." He rolled to face me, his hand cupping my cheek. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you glad you made that choice. See that you do." He kissed me softly. "Thank you for not giving up on me, on us. Thank you for becoming someone worth not giving up on." 6 months later, we renewed our vows. Not a big ceremony, just us, the kids, Dr. Martinez, and a handful of close friends who'd supported us through the hardest year of our lives. We stood on the beach at sunset, something we'd never done before, because our first wedding had been traditional and formal and everything we thought we were supposed to be. This time, we wrote our own vows. David went first, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. Maya, I stand before you today, not as the man who promised you forever 20 years ago, but as the man who broke those promises and had to earn the right to make them again. I vow to see you every day, to choose you every day, to never take for granted the gift of your love, your forgiveness, your willingness to believe in us, even when I gave you every reason not to. I vow to be honest even when it's hard, to communicate even when I want to hide, to fight for us instead of running when things get difficult. And I vow to love you, not the comfortable, complacent love of long marriage, but the active, intentional, passionate love you deserve, every day for the rest of my life. Then it was my turn. David, I stand before you today, not as the woman who blindly trusted you, but as the woman who chose to trust again after you broke it. I vow to give you grace when you stumble, because healing isn't linear, and neither is rebuilding trust. I vow to communicate my needs instead of expecting you to read my mind. I vow to fight for us even on the days I'm tired of fighting. And I vow to love you, not despite your flaws and failures, but knowing them fully and choosing you anyway. Because love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth the work, worth the pain, worth the risk of being broken, and choosing to trust them to help you heal. We exchanged new rings, simple bands engraved with the date we'd survived, not the date we'd married. When the officiant said we could kiss, David pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like." "Thank you for learning," I whispered back. That night, lying in bed with my husband, my partner, my betrayer, my second chance, I thought about all the romance novels I'd read, all the stories where love conquered all and happy endings were inevitable and passion solved every problem. Real love wasn't like that. Real love was messy, complicated, full of setbacks and compromises and choosing each other even when it was hard. Real love was sitting in a Portuguese hospital room deciding whether to destroy or save. Real love was couples therapy and hard conversations and slowly, painfully rebuilding trust one day at a time. Real love was looking at someone who'd hurt you profoundly and deciding they were worth the risk of being hurt again. Was it scary? Absolutely. Was it worth it? I looked at David sleeping beside me, his hand still clutching mine even in sleep. And I knew the answer. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because we'd burned down what we were and built something stronger from the ashes. Something real. Something earned. And that was worth more than 20 years of comfortable lies. If you believe that love is a choice we make every single day, not a feeling that just happens to us, then you understand why the hardest relationships are sometimes the ones most worth fighting for. Thank you for taking this journey with Maya and David. Subscribe for more stories about real love, messy healing, and the courage it takes to believe in second chances, even when your heart is still learning to trust again.